Hi guys, hope you're doing well. My name is Marc Gallagher. I am a professional musician based in Crewe, near Manchester, for those people who don't know what Crewe is. Anyway, I am a professional musician and this is going to be an interesting, nerdy, gear-related video, and it's also going to be a bit of a shootout, so pew pew! You might have seen in a previous video that I've got a Fender Mexican-made Precision Bass. This one's got a rosewood fingerboard, whatever pickups it is. It's like the Mexican standard one from 2008. And this is lovely. However, I have sold this bass now and the buyer is going to come and pick it up in a few days. In a perfect world, I would have preferred to have taken my bass to a seller and done some sort of trade option where I would have been able to A/B my bass against the American-made one and observe the differences. However, we don't live in a perfect world, so that's fine. What I'm going to do is I am doing this video where I am sort of going to play some songs or some pieces and excerpts and licks and what have you on my P bass. Going to play it in a variety of techniques, but fingerstyle, using a plectrum, maybe some slap bass, and then I'm going to play those same excerpts on my new American-made bass when I do get that. In terms of the tracking of this, just for my future reference mainly, I am going directly into my interface. It's the Focusrite Claret Plus, so I'm going into input 4. My gain knob is about 12 o'clock and I've not got the air mode on, so that's fine. We're keeping it consistent and I'm not letting my pedals or amps color it. We're just going to be hearing basically the raw sound of the bass and the pickups that will inform what we have. Okay, so I guess now what's going to happen is that I'm going to play some lines on this bass and various techniques, and then future me will have handed off the Mexican bass, will have bought the USA one, and then future me will play that bass and then give his thoughts. So yeah, let's roll the tape. This is what the Mexican bass sounds like. Okay, so now that we've listened to both of those back to back, hopefully you've had a chance to make up your own mind. But also, I wanted to give my perspective, not just on what I could hear, but also what I could feel as I was playing them, and see what you think of them. So the first most obvious point was that the Mexican bass had a much hotter output. Generally, I like hot pickups in some of my guitars. That's just a taste I generally go for, even at the expense of some top end. However, there are other factors to bear in mind besides just the pickup strength. I could sort of adjust this through raising or lowering the pickup height on my US bass to kind of bring some of that output up a bit more. However, another advantage that this might have though is it might aid in the disparity between balancing level between a P bass and a jazz bass. It's an age-old struggle of having the split coil pickups on a P bass being much hotter in output than those single coils of a jazz bass, and that can be quite frustrating. I've had that experience so far in a band that I've been playing with, where I'm swapping from my P bass and then going to my jazz bass and then I'm having to turn the amp up because of the level disparity. So hopefully, by me just leaning into the slightly quieter nature of the USA bass, it will balance better with my jazz bass and it'll save me some headaches later on. Other setup things I could consider as well is just getting a setup done on the USA bass. I found it very clattery. I felt like I could hear a lot of the metal of the string on the fret, and that's quite indicative of action that's very, very low. Generally, I like my action to be a little bit higher. I like the bass to be fighting me a little bit more. So that's something that I can do to try and bring that element out and reduce the clatteriness that we had from the metal of the strings and the frets interacting with each other. In terms of tone and timbre of the individual pickups, I thought that the Mexican one had much more mids, whereas the USA one had a bit more upper mids. So to use layman's terms of that, I felt like the Mexican one had a bit more weight and a bit more woolliness, whereas the USA one had a bit more poke. You could get more note definition out of the USA bass, even if you weren't getting the bassiness that came with the Mexican bass. And as mentioned, the Mexican pickups are a bit woolly. They do have a little bit of a blanket over them. So that's where you get that weight at the expense of some clarity. That could be due to the pickup height. That could also be just due to the winding of the pickup. Something being slightly overwound so that the player is thinking that louder equals better. That's my thought as to why that is, but yeah, I still really like the definition that you're able to get from the USA pickups. It had less bassiness, but it still had some poke. You could still hear and get the notes a bit more clearly. The plectrum sound, I wasn't a fan of the dry, de-eyed pick sound in either of the basses, honestly. The Mexican one was a bit too muffled, whereas the USA one was a bit too flubby. In terms of the flubbiness, I also felt that the strings on the USA bass were just a bit light. I did ask the seller what gauge they were. He said it's 45 to 100. I don't believe him. So I'm going to soon do a string change to something I might be a bit more familiar with and something that's a little bit firmer to my fingers. And then when it came to the slap bass sound sample, I thought that the USA one was just much better. By having less bass and more definition and more poke, I think that suits slap bass much greater. You know, in some funk context where slap bass is quite common, the bass becomes less of a bassy rhythm instrument and more of a melodic instrument. So by having that element and those characteristics of the USA pickups, I felt like that was a bit more conducive to better slap bass sound. Whereas while it was fun having this weighty thing on the Mexican bass, I still think it kind of got a bit muffled. And those are my thoughts. You've got the 2002 American P-Bass versus the 2008 Mexican one. And both of them, as far as I'm aware, just using stock standard pickups, Mexican standard, American standard, at least for those eras. And yeah, generally speaking, I think that the American one is better because it's clearer, even though it's not as hot. Louder doesn't always equal better, even though that's how us as humans are kind of hardwired to perceive it. That being said, I still really like the Mexican bass, and you know, I was still very fine having and owning it because it had the weight that I kind of wanted. The reason why I suspect the Mexican bass has that way is because, this is just me speculating, I think that in the Mexican built factories for those pickups, they are overwinding things a little bit by giving these hotter winds. They're giving a bit more output so that when the player is in a music shop and they're playing it for the first time, they're going, oh wow, this is so hot, louder must equal better, and then they buy it. That's my suspicion as to why that might be the case, but still, I enjoyed the results, and I generally like hot pickups, so that Mexican bass was still really, really good to play. I'm looking forward to adapting my technique slightly and enjoying slightly more poke, more definition, even if it's less like utter bassiness that's coming from the amp. Right, so the last thing I want to mention as part of this is that for this video, this comparison, I just wanted to get a direct signal, which was just going straight from the bass into the interface. I didn't even level match them because I wanted the level difference to be a part of noticing the difference between the two basses. Obviously, in real life, that's not what happens. We, in real life, go through pedals. In real life, we go through amps, and those will color the signal in some way. So where I had a bit of a bass deficiency on my USA bass, I'm still going to boost the bass ever so slightly to compensate, and maybe the overall tone would be one that I still find really flattering and engaging. But that's it for now. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Which bass did you prefer? Was it the American one, the new toy, or do you think All Reliable still had it? But for now, my name is Marc Gallagher. You can follow me on your social media of choice at Marc Gallagher Music. You can support the things I do on Patreon, patreon.com/Marc Gallagher Music. But for now, I am Marc Gallagher. Like the video if you want, share if you feel compelled to, and follow me on places. I'll catch you down the road.